Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Oxford Summer Academy Course A Debate Night. Tonight is the culmination of one of the electives run by one of our esteemed tutors, a guy called Nadeem. He'll introduce a little bit about what they've done in a minute. But tonight is all about showcasing the debate for you guys. We have 8 students that have been involved in the debate and public speaking workshop, and they will be debating a very, very topical motion for you tonight. And we've got 4 on the proposition to my right, and 4 on the opposition to my left. There will be a chance for rebuttals after the main speeches, and also there will be a chance for you in the floor to give some points at the end as well, before taking a vote tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the debating and public speaking coach, Nadeem.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Frank, for that very hospitable and generous introduction. I believe this is now the 8th debate that we're having today for OSA, and it's been a brilliant experience for me as a tutor. I've been very fortunate to have had the privilege of coaching very, very brilliant public speakers and debaters. I know it's not an easy exercise. A lot of preparation and planning goes into a debate. Members of the audience should be aware that a lot of research is required for a successful debate. In addition to the research, argument identification, being able to identify and develop arguments is also part of that process, and that requires a lot of skill. So we're going to hopefully, I think, it looks like a very promising and very exciting debate. It is a very topical debate right now. The issue of populism. Let me just quickly flick through the format actually for today. So basically we are going to have an audience vote at the end. We're going to ask members of the audience to vote for not the team that they necessarily agree with prior to the debate, but the team that they think has provided the most persuasive arguments. Okay, so what that implies is that you might come to this debate with very fixed ideas and opinions, but that's not what is being tested here. What is being tested here is your ability to, I suppose, identify that team which you think has genuine talent. And it may be that it involves your own opinion changing on the issue. Okay, so I want you to pay very careful attention to what you believe are skillful debaters, skillful arguments, perhaps arguments that you yourself haven't thought about. Okay, in relation to the motion. We're going to have 4 speakers, as Frank said, on each side, 4 in opposition, and we're going to alternate. So we're going to get individual speakers to come up to the podium here, in number order, so number 1, number 2, number 4, and there's going to be a 4-minute time period allowed for each speaker. That's going to be followed with a 20-minute session for rebuttals. That is only going to involve members of the teams themselves. So we're not going to ask members of the audience to ask questions during rebuttals. Okay, and then that's going to be followed by a 20-minute session for members of the audience to ask individual questions to either side. Okay, and then at the end we will ask both teams to leave, maybe from that door over there, I believe. And while they are gone, we will ask or try and obtain a vote from the audience, okay, as to which team they thought has won. Okay, now there is one little tiny detail. You may, if you wish, also abstain. So an abstention then is you deciding that you cannot make a final decision as to which team you thought has won the debate. So we will be taking abstentions as well as obviously votes for or against individual team members. And then we will have a special prize Pros and Cons, the Debater's Handbook, which is much sought after book, yes, for debaters around the world. No doubt. Okay, so that will be the prize for the individual speaker or the best speaker of the night, and I and Frank will decide together as to who we think that person, special person, is. I hope it's going to be somebody we all agree with. This is the motion for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This House believes that populism is dangerous for society, and I have been asked to just explain very quickly, very briefly, what populism is, because there is a debate about what that word actually means, and we've agreed, I think both sides have agreed, on two going definitions, ones that are currently in use. The first definition of that term is that it usually describes a tension between the people and the elites. Now, the elites in any given society could be people who have more education, right, versus the man or the woman in the street who we assume doesn't have as much education. But there is a view that populism is in a sense trying to articulate the views of the average man, average woman, who feel that the elites, more educated representatives, are in a sense don't really have their hand as it were on the issues of the day. Okay, so recently Brexit and the election of Donald Trump were examples of populism, are examples of populism in contemporary culture. The term is also used for, I suppose, ideas and concepts which have become popularized through social media, products. It also includes products, cultural products, perhaps brand names as well. Okay? The second definition, if that's not too complicated, the second definition, populism usually describes a momentary state of opinion. So like a poll or a referendum which reflects the moods or feelings of a particular group at a specific time. So it's usually a temporal situation. So both those definitions, one that it represents a tension between the elites and the ordinary man in the street, and the second definition, which is that it represents a fad or a individual or a momentary feeling, public feeling, are the two definitions which both teams have agreed on. Right? So if we all accepted that as the definitions, then we can begin our debate. Okay? So I will ask, hopefully, speaker number one, the first speaker for the proposition, to open the debate tonight. Thank you.
At its core, it's easy to understand why populism is so appealing. By definition, populism gives a voice to the people to rise up against the powerful, and it's hard to argue that being a bad thing. After all, the power of the people has led to some of the most important advancements in recent history, such as legalized gay marriage and civil rights. But we should not confuse populism as a political movement with grassroots politics. Grassroots politics is about building groundswell support for a cause that authentically starts with the people. By contrast, populism is most often about political movements that are orchestrated by a leader with an agenda. Populism, in practice, is about political manipulation that plays on fear and biases and often disregards facts and reason. In fact, populist movements have led to some of the greatest and most horrific events in world history, including racism, Islamophobia, anti-immigration, and even slavery. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, the opposition will not like the example of Adolf Hitler, but it is fact that Hitler was brought to power through populist motions. Even Pope Francis has agreed with this statement, saying that an example of populism is Germany in 1933. Germany was looking for a leader, someone who could give her back her identity, and there was a little man named Adolf Hitler who said, "I can do it." Hitler did not steal power. He was elected by his people, and he destroyed his people. Hitler offered a scapegoat, the Jewish people. Anger and fear made the German population vulnerable, and although it was against logic, followed Hitler, eventually leading to World War II and the Holocaust. This is a classic example of the dangers of populism, one that led to the deaths of up to 6 million Jews, 7 million Soviet civilians, around 3 million Soviet prisoners of war, 312,000 Serbs, up to 250,000 people with disabilities, 220,000 Roma, 1,900 Jehovah's Witnesses, and thousands of homosexual men. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no joke. The Nazis put aside reasons and facts and convinced themselves and much of the world that these deaths were somehow helping. Elie Wiesel, one of the best-known Holocaust survivors, has a well-known quote about the Holocaust. He said, "Never again." Yet here we are, less than a century later, with this same kind of genocide, enacted under the guise of populism, has continued until this day in places like Rwanda, South Sudan, Syria, and more than a dozen other countries. Another example of the horrors of populism is slavery. Slavery of Africans is well known from the American South, but also prevalent in England, France, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Spain. The uneducated ruled to use Africans as free labor and would rape, whip, and trade slaves like property. On the other hand, educated people such as Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, were fiercely anti-slavery. Slavery had great damage on the world as a whole. It resulted in broken traditions, broken families, illiteracy, lower life expectancy, rape of black women, and the lives of 620,000 American soldiers. But not all populism is in the past. Even today, we see populism through Islamophobia, Trump, various types of discrimination, and groups such as the KKK. Since 9/11, the world, especially America, has been very discriminatory towards Muslims. The Supreme Court is heavily divided, just like America, between rational thought and raw prejudices and emotions. When the political climate changed, the Supreme Court decision to uphold the Muslim ban, which was very narrow, might turn as well. The claim that populist politics works for ordinary working people against the political and economic elites has, in fact, been keeping people powerless and poor for decades. It's merely a guise for power-hungry politicians who use deception and emotional manipulation to advance personal agendas, which most often lead to some of the ugliest outcomes of human history, and is exactly what makes the world the way it is now, the opposite of what makes humankind good. Thank you.
Elizabeth from the opposition, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this debate tonight. Our house believes that populism is not inherently dangerous in society, and that the proposition has misrepresented this term without understanding its actual meaning. Is it dangerous to bring water on an airplane? Not really, since water by itself isn't dangerous. However, there is still a rule that prohibits us from bringing more than 100 milliliters of liquids on board a plane due to the possibility that the liquid might contain liquid explosives. But water isn't dangerous. It simply has the potential to be. This analogy can be applied to populism. The proposition believes that populism is, without a doubt, dangerous to society 100% of the time. However, they've merely misconstrued the term and have failed to understand its actual meaning, cherry-picking only negative examples of populism while completely ignoring the many positive examples of populist societies. What is populism? Populism is the belief that ordinary people should shape the society they live in. It's the idea that the voices of the 1% should not overpower the voices of the 99%. The proposition has represented populism as a right-wing ideology, drawing comparisons to Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. According to Benjamin Moffat, author of The Rise of Global Populism, this association is actually very Eurocentric. Populism is a thin ideology that requires another full ideology to work. Therefore, there are no purely populist societies. This means that populist societies can fall at any end of the political spectrum. Populism is shaped by circumstances, and those circumstances are not always negative. In 2008, Barack Obama, a populist leader, was elected President of the United States. During his 8-year term, he introduced the Affordable Care Act, supplying 20 million Americans with health care against the wishes of multi-million-dollar private health care companies.
Excuse me, I have a point of interest.
Yeah.
Sorry, point
Point of information.
But Barack Obama is not actually like a populist leader, because a populist leader just supports the majority, represents the majority of America, which is straight white males. And
He did represent the majority. The majority voted him in.
But he's a reformist.
He's a reformist. He's a black man himself. Like Donald Trump, per se, he's a populist leader, but he was just.
Well, you're misunderstanding what populism is.
But he just defined it.
Okay, that's fine.
Against the wishes of multi-million-dollar private healthcare companies, Obama also made huge progress for the LGBT community by legalizing gay marriage in 2015, despite widespread backlash from powerful religious groups. In South America, the rise of left-wing politicians in countries such as Venezuela and Argentina, known as the Pink Tide, was also a populist movement. After Operation Condor, many South and Central Americans grew dissatisfied under the brutal right-wing regimes in which they lived. The anti-apartheid movement was also populist. The people were able to recognize that segregation and mistreatment based on one's race was wrong and stood up to the elites who still had faith in such a backward system. In 1981, the people of the Philippines revolted against their president, Ferdinand Marcos, in a populist uprising. Similarly, in 1989, Romania rose up against the totalitarian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. One could also make the argument that the fall of the Berlin Wall was also populist. More recently, in South Korea, President Park Geun-hye was impeached after her corruption was exposed. This was also populist. In former Soviet states, most notably Ukraine and Georgia, anti-authoritarian populist movements had led to the reintroduction of their formerly repressed cultures back into the mainstream. Here in the UK, an example of a populist leader is Jeremy Corbyn. Elected head of the Labour Party in 2015, Corbyn has managed to get millions of young Brits involved in politics due to his focus on issues that impact the British youth, such as the housing crisis and high tuition fees. We, the opposition, are not denying that tragedies have occurred in populist states. However, the point we want to make absolutely clear is that populism is a very versatile term that can mean a number of different things. You can find positive, neutral, and negative examples of populism, yet the proposition is instead focusing entirely on the negative, cherry-picking examples to suit their own narrative without looking at the entire issue. We implore you to look at the whole picture and vote for us. Non decor duco. I am not led, I lead.
Can we have Ariel, please, for the proposition?
Populism versus unpopulism is a debate of prejudice and normality versus tolerance and individuality. When it comes to culture, populism results in a range of harmful effects, from lack of expression to self-harm and racism. Populism is prevalent down to the level of high school or even middle school students. Students need to maintain social approval by following populist trends and fads, which deprives them of what is best about themselves, their individuality. Trends can go from wearing plain Supreme tees to more serious issues such as wrist cutting. Not only can trends be very expensive, but they can cause serious harm. Recent data indicates that 7% of middle school youth, 15% of high school students, and almost 1/3 of all adolescents referred for clinical treatment engage in non-suicidal self-injury. Trying to maintain social approval makes your self-confidence and your self-worth dependent on people's opinions. Populist trends involving adolescents are most often not positive ones, and at least encourages a lack of individuality in teens. Speaking of following trends, populism gives celebrities way too much power. People jump on bandwagons that can be quite detrimental. For example, when Zayn left One Direction, several girls uploaded videos of themselves cutting. At least 6 girls committed suicide due to it. For individuals to take their own life for a reason like that just shows how much power popular artists and celebrities have over people. Additionally, along with the popular appreciation of celebrities such as Cristiano Ronaldo and Selena Gomez, they are treated as experts on subjects that really matter, such as politics. This can determine the opinions of many, based on not personal opinion, but the mindless following of some famous person. Lastly, the culture of several countries' most popular race calls for racial discrimination of minorities. Social Darwinism was a largely popular theory in the 19th and 20th centuries. Encyclopedia Britannica defines social Darwinism as the theory that human groups and races are subject to the same laws of natural selection as Charles Darwin had perceived in plants and animals in nature. The weak were manipulated and their cultures diminished, while the strong grew in power and in cultural influence over the weak. In the end, when it comes to culture, taking on populist views creates a world without originality and progressive beliefs. The populist opinion is not the superior opinion. History has proven it, the present has proven it. Therefore, I ask you to dismiss the argument of the opposition's arguments.
Katarina for the opposition, please.
First things first, I would like to thank all of you for coming to the debate. I know it wasn't a choice for some of you, but it means a lot to all of us that you came. As it was said, we believe that populism is being misinterpreted. One example of neutral or even good populist idea is one main language everybody speaks. Not necessarily English, but any language that is used internationally. It is used to share ideas, to communicate, and worldwide collaborate in different projects that can make a difference in today's world. As many of you know, I'm from Slovenia, a very small country between Central and Southern Europe. Surprisingly, we have our own language, which is very hard to understand and even harder to learn. I love my language, but it is nearly impossible to communicate if almost nobody understands you. This is why we need a universal language. We Slovenians use it when participating in global projects and when, like now, studying abroad. One of many definitions of populism is momentary opinion. The majority of the world knows the same songs, watches the same movies, reads the same books, eats the same food. I would say that these things are momentary. Just like Pen Pineapple Apple song, which was popular in 2016, most things will be popular in a few years from now. Therefore, these are considered populist ideas. None of the things above are dangerous, or at least I don't see how a Pen Pineapple Apple song can be considered dangerous. Slightly funny, silly, and stupid, yeah, but never dangerous. The second definition of populism is that it is a division between ordinary people and the educated elite. We were thinking hard on this one. We realized that there is an amazing example, a case that is known worldwide. Black Lives Matter. I don't want you to get the wrong impression. I firmly believe in equality and importance of life. But I also think that black people's anger is misguided. Now, what do I mean by misguided? Black community is furious at all the white people for being racist. Now, I feel like the majority of white Americans are very supportive of civil rights. Just a small section of them are racist. They're just a minority in a majority. Policemen who are responsible for the crimes are led by the government who belongs to the elite. So really, African American anger would be better directed towards the elite, the leaders of the country, instead of normal, ordinary people, majority of whom is not discriminating people of color. A famous playwright, P.G. O'Rourke, once said, "Simply because something is a populist movement doesn't make it either good or bad." And our group, the opposition, believes in that sentence. Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that you will realize that too and vote against the proposition. Quia communi hominum, for the common man.
And can we have that man for the proposition, please?
To quote the old Latin proverb, Temendi causa est nesere. The cause of fear is ignorance. The cause of ignorance is a lack of understanding. Science today is such that the opinions we have of evolution and the way the universe is formed is that of a popular opinion, and that one does not need to be educated to believe that the world is round or that the human race is millions of years old. However, it has not always been the case that we have had such easy and reliable answers to fall back on when we ask rather huge questions. There was a time when the majority of our truths about humanity came from the Word of God. Religions date back to prehistory, and as an opinion on the science behind the universe, it has interrupted the flow of human discovery and learning. It was Galileo in 1610 who published his study in heliocentrism, who was found guilty of heresy by the Church for believing that the Earth was not the center of the universe. Galileo was banned from teaching, defending, or even having heliocentric ideas. The church until then provided answers to both the intellectuals and the commoners, and in that way was the most dominant form of populism ever seen. The ability to strip a person of an idea because it challenges common belief is tantamount to encouraged ignorance, and I won't stand for it. I do not want the world to succumb to the same fate as the indefinitely imprisoned Galileo. Sad and ugly. In light of the events of the Galileo affair, the Church in the 19th and 20th century adapted closer to the times around them. It was Pope John Paul II who said faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth, and God has placed in the human's heart a desire to know the truth, in a word, to know himself. So that by knowing and loving God, men and women may also come to the fullness of truth about themselves, a truth that cannot be found in the people around you. Individual knowledge is the first step past ignorance, nullius in verba, or in peasant speak. Take nobody's word for it. God bless America. God save the Queen.
It was a very good speech, Lachlan. Honestly. Anyway, so starting with the session. Good evening, scholars of this famous university. I'm here to discuss the role of religion in populism. I would like to start by saying that populism is a very sweet and innocent term, but the proposition is portraying it as a very negative term. I would like to share a quote in Latin saying, "Vux populi, vux Dei," which means that the voice of people is the voice of God. I will first tell you that I do love and respect all religions and have no dislike towards any of the religious practices. I am an Indian, and as everyone knows, India is a secular country. So I have seen and also have knowledge about many religions and their religious practices, because I have seen many churches, I have been to many mosques, gurudwaras and temples, and I have experienced how all the religions are beautiful in their own way. But after visiting all of these sacred places, I felt sad, because being a Hindu, I visited many of the religious places of other religions, though the minorities, for example Muslims, have not visited any of the religious temples and any of the religious temples, and neither taken part in any of the rituals. And I must reveal a bitter truth, that Hinduism is not popular in the country where it was originally started, and as other religions, especially of those of the minorities, have suppressed it. So don't you all think that there's something wrong, ladies and gentlemen? Therefore, I honestly think that there must be equality among everyone and every religion, which can be shown by populism. Hence, I feel that Hindus, or the majorities, do respect the rituals and the religion of the minorities, but then the minorities do not respect the things or the rituals or the religion of the majorities. Because I do not see any of the Muslims as such coming to the temples and reciprocating other religions with such respect. And isn't respect a two-way street, ladies and gentlemen? According to me, the majorities wants a voice to speak out their importance.
Point of interest, you can't generalize Muslims for not going to Hindu temples. You could be a minority of just going to mosques, which is really good, but you cannot generalize Muslims for not going to
Why? Because I've never seen any of the Muslims. Because
Okay, that's not a point of information, so it has to be a point of information.
Oh, sorry.
Repeat.
anyways, so here the proposition is trying to portray populism as a very negative term, only having bad effects, but it also has many good things too, like the anti-apartheid movement, as Elizabeth said, or the AAM, that was a British organization and was able to crush the South African apartheid system, where the non-white population were persecuted and by the policies of apartheid. Then I can also talk about the Prime Minister of my country, Narendra Modi, who, for the betterment of Indians, also initiated a lot of good schemes, initiated a lot of good schemes, like the demonetization program, where the government government claimed that the action would curtail shadow economy and the crackdown on the use of illicit counterfeit cash to fund illegal activity and terrorism. Then we can also say that the Pope himself is a populist leader, because he does not roam in luxurious cars, does not have any bodyguards, and always help the ordinary people. Hence, it can also be said that he is a populist Pope, as he refuses all the trappings and the luxuries that one can enjoy at his position. Therefore, I would like to conclude by strongly advising you to vote against the proposition. Thank you.
So we have the final speaker, Adam, please, for the proposition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So first, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to thank my team, the opposition, the mediators, and the audience, all for coming. Gani, especially for the clean shirt. And I'd also like to apologize for speaking out of turn. You guys both gave very good speeches. I'm sorry for speaking out of turn. But thank you, Jay. But I'd like to start off with two wise quotes which have truly impacted my life. So the first comes from a man named Gonzalo Liano, and he once said, "I like karaoke." And the second comes from Jed Grabois, who once said, "So guys, when are we going to Pan Pan?" But anyway, let's get into the speech. I just wanted to grab you guys' attention. But this house, as you all know, considers populism as a danger to the future of human civilization. And we see it as something which creates many problems for our societies. This is especially prominent in something we all use on a daily basis, social media. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you all to name a celebrity for me who's died recently, who's passed away? XXX Tentacion. Very good. So now, ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to name for me a child who's been killed recently from a conflict anywhere in the world? You can, it's very hard. So no answers. Let me explain to you again. So how many of you have heard of Kim Kardashian or Justin Bieber? All of you guys, right? So now how many of you have heard of Ahmed Shawish or Hassan Farouqi? None of you guys. The latter are both nameless statistics of the Syrian civil war. We are more focused and worried about the antics of celebrities with no depth whatsoever, rather than worrying about young children being killed in our own world. Popular belief makes it okay to focus on fake celebrities than dying children. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposing side is arguing that simple celebrity struggles are more important than other human beings' lives. Ladies and gentlemen, populism disconnects us from the real world. We become more embedded in the world of social media stars. The opposition is saying that that is okay. How is this even an argument? That we should focus on celebrities rather than innocents being killed in wars? Even at its lowest level, populism can affect our own children. They all use social media and want to become like what they see on the screens. It can be as simple as when a child goes and buys a Supreme t-shirt or Yeezys for an outrageous price. No offense, Julian, you make it work. But if you think about it, it may seem like nothing's wrong with our society. But deep down, many people in the third world countries can fully support their families on that same money for years. But social media draws us not to them, but instead to kimye and materialism. A form of populism can also be when children become obsessed with their idols and, as Ariel has mentioned, are willing to inflict self-harm over someone with absolutely no depth whatsoever. But children are shut out through the incorrect use of social media and involvement of celebrities of social media, which is poorly influencing our children. Facebook, for example, ladies and gentlemen, serves as a classic example of populism. It may seem like it's nothing, but greedy corporations are taking your information and selling it to third parties so that they can direct ads in favor of evil populism trying to brainwash you. These popular companies endorse the use of their services and the use of your personal data so that they can benefit, all the while pushing you towards populism. Populism can be generated through something as simple as the ads on your Facebook or Instagram. Everyone knows of the fake news and the tabloids used to persuade many towards Trump's side earlier on in the campaign. These ads are known to dehumanize and demonize groups of people, when in reality, these propaganda ads are untrue and cause rifts between people for the end goal of populism. And such is the evil of populism, ladies and gentlemen. We also see much of the world through social media, such as the problems. But we become so lost in the vastness of social media and concentrate on less important subjects like Kim K, or rather than following conflicts in Yemen per se. But the benefits of social media and becoming more aware of the world around us are overshadowed by misuse. As the great Lachlan said, ladies and gentlemen, I will not stand for it. Do not give in to populism and do not focus solely on the trivial lives of stupid celebrities. Protect our society. And as our conclusion, this house believes that populism is extremely detrimental to society. We have given many examples of the cruelty of populism, which has given rise to disconnection from the world. Racism, Hitler, and divisions between fellow human beings. Again, do not let populism control human beings. Do not let uneducated bigots choose the path for our world. Thank you very much.
Populism is not a style. It's a people's rebellion against the iron grip that big corporations have on our country, including our economy, government, media, and environment, said Jim Hightower, author, commentator, and activist. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and allies, we're here to tell you that populism has been misunderstood for far too long. Vox Populi, the voice of the people. Populism defends the voice of the common man. Populism is essentially democracy in its most purest, most basic form. So why is it so misunderstood and feared? Yes, we admit that populism could potentially be dangerous. It could be manipulated for dangerous purposes. But does this actually mean that populism is dangerous? Let us return to the analogy of populism as water. It is against flight regulations to carry more than 100 milliliters of water on board airplanes, as it is known for known to be possible for experts to create explosives out of more than 100 milliliters of any liquid, which includes water. Does this mean that water is dangerous? Absolutely not. It may be twisted for malevolent purposes, but this does not mean in any way that water itself is dangerous. Equally, just because populism could potentially be used to meet unhealthy ends does not mean that populism itself is dangerous. Populism in social media is very often funny, silly, perhaps shallow, but dangerous? Is there really any kind of danger within populism? Of course not. Let us consider some examples of populism within social media. Memes, celebrities, hashtags, and GIFs. Now, which of these could possibly be a threat? Are memes going to chase you down the street and demand money? Are GIFs going to eat you alive? Oh my god, cannibalism! Populism in social media is unnecessary perhaps, silly most of the time, maybe even inappropriate or slightly offensive, but not dangerous, never dangerous. Saying that populism in social media is dangerous is simply an overstretch of imagination by the people against populism, say the elites, the government perhaps, but of course, the people currently in power don't want populism to be spread. Populism is essentially the common people standing up for themselves against the elites. So what does happen if populism is considered dangerous and it is banned from society? This may seem extreme, dystopian even. Would it surprise you to find out that China bans foreign social media, which is a significant part of populism? China does not allow her citizens to use Facebook or any type of foreign social media. This denial of populism by the Chinese state has led to its people being isolated from the rest of the world. The rest of the world do not understand such domestic politics, and the Chinese citizens are being denied exposure to other foreign cultures that may be beneficial to them. Foreign populism is necessary to break the hold of the Chinese government, who are the elites in this instance, on Chinese society. There must be motion made by the common Chinese man to break free of the oppression they are subjected under. Populism defends the common man. It gives the silent masses power and dignity against the authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have provided clear arguments supported by historical and current facts against the claim that populism is dangerous to society. We have done so in the fields of politics, culture, religion, and social media. I hope we have been able to convince you that populism is not dangerous to society. Former political opinions cast aside, I strongly urge you to vote against the proposition team who have misunderstood populism so completely to the point that they're genuinely confused and they are convinced that populism is dangerous. Thank you for spectating our debate. Vox Populi Vincere. May the voice of the people win.
Wow, amazing. Thank you very much. I think that was a very good demonstration on both sides of very concise and cogent argumentation. This is a very difficult area. I mean, to be able to go through culture, religion, and politics in such a concise and cogent manner, I think is really superb. So a round of applause for both teams. I think they've shown themselves to be very impressive. We will give both teams a couple of minutes to gather their thoughts, yes, before we start our rebuttal session. So if we could just get both teams to concentrate on their efforts and to target their questions to individuals, that is, and we will start with the proposition side opening. So just a couple of minutes.
Maybe let's take 2 or 3 questions at once, then give them a chance to respond, and then they'll respond, and then they'll have 2 or 3 questions to give you the chance to respond, and we'll run that back and forth evenly for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So you've got 2 minutes to start.
And can I just ask, while they're doing that, audience members to start gathering your thoughts as well? Because there's going to be questions for you as well to ask. So we're going to alternate, okay? We're going to take a couple of questions together. Yes? So if I could ask your team leader, it's Tess.
I'm not the team leader.
Oh, Adam, sorry. Adam, I do apologize. Sorry, Adam, to perhaps come up with a couple of questions. You can do it from here if you like, from the podium, or from where you're sitting. I mean, you've already determined. Okay,
does
that's
he ask
fine.
all the questions?
Well, I mean, a couple of questions first, and then we'll allow the opposition to prepare their prize.
I have a question about the water bottle analogy. I don't really think it's a fair kind of analogy to make, in that, like, I guess the world is the plane and the concept of populism is some inconspicuous water bottle that's never like hurt anybody. Because of, I feel like a few of the things Tess mentioned about, you know, some of the campaigns that ran under populism, which I shall not speak of again because they're really sad. I feel like the water bottle analogy kind of drops off there. So.
Okay, is that a question?
So where exactly? What is the exact analogy?
Okay, good. Right.
What is the exact
Try and
analogy?
keep these questions pithy, yeah? Have you got another question? Yeah, Tess.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Well, first I just want to apologize to Elizabeth and also Adam for interrupting the points of information. Yeah, I feel really bad about that. Yeah, sure. The question is for Jay. When you were talking about the Pope being populist, I actually quoted in my speech an argument. The Pope had a speech about being anti-populist and how it led to the rise of Hitler. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
So the proposition team questioned the water bottle analogy. We're not saying that populism is completely harmless. We're saying that, like, populism, just like water, has so much potential, and, like, it could be anything. It could be beneficial. It could be, like, unhealthy. It can be many things. But just like water, it's so utterly wrong to say that populism is just like negative thing, and it is dangerous to society. Thank you.
So, I mean, see, Pope opposes populism because, you know, he might have misconstrued the definition of populism, because as Nigel sir told that there are many definitions of populism, and populism itself is a versatile word. So it can just be twisted and turned by many people, and Pope might be one of them. Therefore, it might be a false argument to make, and honestly, it's a messed up relativism. So, thank you.
I have a question for Tess. So, you said that slavery was populist. I would agree with you, but only in the southern half of the United States. You could make the argument that slavery was not populist, and in fact, anti-slavery was populist in Canada and the northern half of the country.
Is there a question?
Do you have a
Do
rebuttal?
you agree? Do you agree with?
agree.
Well, when I
Hold
listen...
on, I'm going to take two questions.
That's one
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
One more question.
okay, so I have a question for Tess and Adam. You both brought up Hitler. Now the conditions that he was voted in, like Germany was crashed and without dignity, and it had to pay off lots of loans for the First War. And he had this hope that he will bring back dignity to Germany. And while doing his campaign, he never mentioned that there was going to be a Holocaust. He was just giving hope to German people that were at the time hopeless. Now, how do you do it?
Wait. So over the campaign, he actually did mention Jews over and over again. And so, I mean, if you do say that he gave hope, I mean, he gave hope, but he also killed like millions of people. Like,
Yeah, but at the time he was elected, nobody really assumed that he was gonna kill that many people.
but even in my talk before he got elected, there's lots of stuff about Jews in there. He was in jail too. So I mean, I'm pretty sure that people knew.
I mean, I don't think the Hindu Dharma cannot be like Hindus.
I mean, either way, they voted for him. He's a populist leader. He didn't do any good. It's not, okay. So that was, I was going to say.
Okay, so any more on this?
What about the rebuttal to Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. You said slavery. Well, you talked about how it wasn't populist in Canada, but I was naming kind of the countries it was populist in, and it was like Portugal, Spain, England, and America, like not Canada. And I do agree with you in the division between the North and South, but in America as a whole, as a country, yes. Do you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay. Should I stop?
You finish.
You're right. In America as a whole, as a country, it was the belief of the common man, in a way, the majority, the white straight man, that to use those things. And it was the educated elite, such as Abraham Lincoln, who were against it.
Just a reminder to the audience, you're going to have questions to either side, and we'll take them in batches of 2 or 3, and then you can answer them.
Okay, so 2 questions from each team.
My question would be for Jay. So you mentioned how you in particular visit lots of like temples, masjids. It's a very good thing. I appreciate that. But I think you forgot to mention like Hinduism, like as a majority, like maybe picking on like the little guys, maybe as Muslims. So maybe the Delhi massacre, like 1,800 Muslims have been killed. 1969 in Bhiwandi, Gujarat riots, Hishmapura. The Babri Mosque, was blown up. Gujarat is always violent there. Kashmir also, but since the partition, actually 1,598 Muslims have been killed. But is that okay with you? That's populism? Is that good?
Okay, so we'll come back to answer that. And one more question, please.
Jay, you said you said that populism is sweet and innocent, but like, would you say that the Holocaust and slavery is sweet and innocent? And Sunny, this is sort of related. You said that populism has a potential, has a potential to harm, but like it already has. So.
Okay, thank you. So 2 questions for Jay. Yes.
So Adam, honestly, I mean, you're just focusing on the problems where Muslims were killed. In your facts, there was like nothing, because in the same riots, Hindus were also killed, and even there were other riots where like Muslims were massacred. Where Muslims massacred Hindus at large numbers. So like, I'm just for your information, India. Like Hinduism, which was originally started in India, as I mentioned in my speech, it's like Hinduism is not so popular as you all think. Because honestly, me and my family have experienced it. Because Hinduism, where Hinduism started, is like it's kind of suppressed by the minorities. Because because minorities, they sometimes bring up certain topics where it's just like the majorities always have to keep silent, and hence they just suffer in silence.
Okay, and then the second question was sweet and innocent.
About that. See, it's as I said earlier, it's a versatile word, and it can be twisted and turned into many other things. And as you you are twisting it and just using it against me. I mean, that's just cornering me at one side. That's not fair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Just come off the podium. And these will be the final questions in our rebuttal session.
So Adam, when you were saying about Kim Kardashian and the celebrities and how we focus more on them than serial killers, well, I don't think that you'll agree. Probably that the media would belong to the elite, because I don't think it like kind of belongs to like uneducated people. I think elite, I think media would be taken more as an elite, and maybe like the elite is trying to get our attention from Syrian kids and Syria in wars, and rather focus our attention on celebrities.
What's the question? Just give it.
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Okay, that's fine.
And second question.
Okay.
Ariel mentioned that friends suicided due to Zayn leaving One Direction. Can I ask where this verse came from, and like whether Zayn's leaving One Direction was the only reason for suicide?
All right. So hi there, Katie. So you said that. Wait. So you said that the media is used by elites to focus on Kim Ye, or like what was the?
I suggested that media is a part of the elite, and that maybe the elite is trying like to get our attention from the wars, and instead focus us on the less important things, which are celebrities. So actually, the elite is here doing the wrong thing. It's not. I mean, we bought like media.
Yeah.
So actually, ordinary people are not really to blame here.
Okay, but like, okay, so you're saying that the elite runs the media, and that's why it's not populist, or what?
No, that media is, well, it can be like controlled by elite, or maybe it can be the elite, and that maybe the ordinary people, we that watch like, I don't know, social media, for example, maybe that it's taking our focus from the important parts of the world, like Syria, for example, as you said, and instead focusing us on the less important parts, which is like the Kardashians.
Okay, so you're saying that the elites is why that's happening?
Yeah, the elite here is to blame, not ordinary people who are just watching the media.
Where's your proof for that? Like, how do you know that elites run like the media, like average
not
journalists?
Not that they run the media, but like that they more belong, the media itself more belongs to the elite.
I mean,
so the media, the news that we get, and the other reporting that we get is controlled by educated elites. It's not the man in the street that's responsible for what goes on. That's what she's asking.
Oh, yeah.
So do you agree with that, or do you think it's not?
Well, I don't agree with that, because like it can be controlled by the media, because see, television works on ratings, really. So like populism itself says that they want to see Kim Kardashian rather than seeing like airstrikes in Yemen. Which one like do you think they'll go to the Kim Kardashian? It's run by them. The elites can't put on what to show. You know what I mean? Because like if they did, then like you would have them controlling everything, and then the common man wouldn't have nothing to say with it. Populism is tied in with like the media, and that's why we see all this like Kim Kardashian stuff. Because see, take like an average farmer in Ohio. Do you think he cares about what's happening in Yemen, or do you think he cares more about Kim Kardashian, how she looks on TV, and how Kanye West is doing all his stuff or whatever they do? You know, like what appeals more to them? Like something that's happening like miles and miles away, or something that they're interested in with drama and a lot of upsetting? Because they control the ratings, they control the TV, the media. What comes up?
Okay, and did Mignon's point get answered?
Mignon's point? An answer, yeah.
It was from a Cosmopolitan article. So yeah,
Okay, yeah, it's all.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, I think we'll have to stop it there, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I think that was a very exciting round because, again, lots of very detailed questions were asked. People were under pressure, I think. Individual speakers were under a lot of pressure to be as concise and as cogent as possible under the face of, obviously, questions that they were not prepared for. Okay, because rebuttal session is a session where they are not prepared for, haven't prepared, for. Right, now we can start our final session, which is going to involve members of the audience. I'm assuming then we're going to take it in batches of 2 and 3 questions, Frank. So if I can ask you to raise your hand, we'll just take 2 or 3 questions at a time, and you can direct them either at the proposition or the opposition.
Tess, can you please explain why slavery was populist and why the abolition movement wasn't?
Okay, so that can you just make a note of that, please? She won't answer immediately. That's the first question. Okay, the second question, please.
Can you also not deny that populism through celebrities has been very useful? Like recently, Chance the Rapper gave away several $1 million to his home state, funding hundreds of people's educations. Or can you deny that even XXXTentacion, a terrible person, was giving back to his community, helping orphans actually get PlayStations, game consoles that would have been insane to get 10 years ago, that would have never happened. Even simple celebrities like Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, ensuring that people, even though they still sell expensive shoes like Yeezys, they still give them to little kids. Recently even, a special kid with cerebral palsy that 10 years ago, Make-A-Wish would have been insane. But
Okay.
nowadays, through populism, through social media, this can be...
Okay, so wonderful question. Is that a question to the whole team or to an individual?
to the whole
To the whole team. So the question is, there are benign celebrities. Yes, there are celebrities who do lots of good works, who are populist. So that's the question for the proposition. Yes, lady over here.
So for Catherine, as part of your argument, you said that angry black people were misguiding their anger towards all the white people, and that they should be directing it at like the government and like things like that instead. But don't you agree that a central argument of Black Lives Matter is like that the legislation and the government itself is what's wrong, not just random white people, racist white people?
Okay, very good question. So that will be the third question. Okay, for Katerina, that misguided anger is not actually misguided, it's directed at the government. It's not directed at anyone. Okay, one more question maybe from someone else in the audience. Come on. Yes, over here.
Populism brought to me Pakistan and India.
Yes.
Under British control.
Yes.
And I want to ask Jay and Adam if they agree that populism made a good result or a bad one.
Okay, so this is to do with India and Pakistan, the conflict between India and Pakistan, the partition, yeah, because there was some argumentation between Jay and Adam. Okay, and whether or not populism has produced...
Do you think that populism had a good effect between those two states?
Between those two nations, India and Pakistan. It's a good one. Okay, so I think we're going to take those 4 questions as the first batch. Members of the audience, please prepare. Second question in the second batch. Okay, so if we can get the first question answered, please, for Tess. Okay, Tess?
So, Jay, if I understand it correctly, you're asking how slavery is a populist movement?
And what made the abolition movement not that?
Okay, well, slavery was it was considered acceptable. It was popular. And the difference was that the educated elites, such as Lincoln, did not believe it, while the normal man, although, albeit some of it didn't believe in slavery, many of them thought it was okay because they were uneducated, and all they saw from it was free labor, and that was okay with them. As for the abolitionist movement, when populism turns over, it is no longer populist. Do you know what I mean? That wasn't very well articulated.
The numbers would imply there were less people who did support slavery when slavery was a thing in America. So that's why I'm confused.
Right.
And actually, there are more people who supported abolition, which is why I'm confused on where the line is drawn.
That is true.
I can draw the line.
But even the proof that slavery existed in the first place and was supported by multiple people, and so many people died, so many traditions broken up, so many African Americans now who don't even know what country they were from, shows that it still really had a very negative impact on America as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so
one of you team to answer Julian's.
Right, the second question, if you remember, was benign celebrities. Are there celebrities who are genuinely charitable and saintly? Yes, populist celebrities who we could venerate.
Yeah. You said a whole person?
Who's going to just one person, please. So we've got to keep it short and sweet. We want to go on to the next batch and then. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Aaron will attempt to answer this one.
So X got away with sexual assault due to his popularity. So that kind of goes to show how populism can rise celebrities to this pedestal where they can be still accepted after stuff like this. And arguably, Chance the Rapper may have only had this huge donation, to be looked at as a good person up to his fans. So it might have been totally good intention.
I think we've answered the question.
Okay. So then there are obviously celebrities who have got away with murder, so to speak. And then the third question. What was the third question?
India.
Very good question. So maybe maybe Jay and Adam could answer that one. Has populism been successful or unsuccessful in relation to India and Pakistan?
To answer your question, I think that in the case of Pakistan and India especially, I think that in this case populism has turned out to be worse because there are still minorities in India and in Pakistan too being discriminated against. And they're both being really mistreated, and no one likes being mistreated. I feel that this is one of the few ways that it actually could have been handled. There are better ways that could have been handled, but staying as a whole country would have been ultimately worse, I think, because just one group would have taken over the other, Hindus versus Muslims, and that's also happening in India right now on a smaller scale. But then again, if Pakistan was still a part of it, it would still be a lot of violence as well and a lot of cultural tension, even as there is now. But it is on a lower scale because of that. But I do think it could have been handled a bit differently. But the populism aspect of there, I do feel is unfair to all the minorities, especially in areas you take like Kashmir or Gujarat, where different minorities, people are being secluded or discriminated against because of their beliefs or their religion, their ethnicity, everything like that. So.
And one month ago, I did a research about it, and the tension between India and Pakistan are because of the Indian region of Kashmir that Pakistan wants. And this region, I found out that there's a kind of rich region, and it's with this region that these two countries violate the ceasefire and go attacks each other. And minorities, I think, are just only an excuse for having that region.
Okay, Adam, quickly, just if you want to give Jay a chance.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So the thing with Kashmir, so you think that minorities are an excuse for that? I think I see what you mean.
Violation of minorities, there are, but it's kind of is not a real problem.
You don't think so? So one thing about Kashmir is that the press has been censored greatly in Kashmir, so you never hear about any of this stuff. Especially, it's very prominent. The media still gets through sometimes, but there's lots of things that don't get out, that you don't hear about on the daily. Even just a few weeks ago, there are lots of children being hit with rubber bullets. They go blind because of it. Did you hear about that? No. It's a lot of torture methods, including just taking torture, a lot of rapes that happen to innocent people, and it's not something that's excusable for land, no matter what it is. So.
Okay, thank you.
So about the Jammu and Kashmir thing, see, history has proven that India has always defended against Pakistanis because Pakistanis have always invaded India and captured the peaks. Yes.
Wait, let him say his piece.
I mean, I can challenge you. You can bring up anything. I just challenge you that when has India invaded Pakistani borders? I can challenge you. And then another question for your speech is that.
Okay, Jay, can we bring it back to the issue of populism? I think.
Does populism work for India and Pakistan or not?
Yeah.
Are they good? Those countries.
Got a voice trying.
Yes.
Okay, so sorry for that. So according to me, populism, I don't think that it has been such a great issue between India and Pakistan, because it's kind of neutral, because it's just one of the effects which has been promoting the issues between India and Pakistan, because as you all know that India and Pakistan has a very bad history. So populism is just one of the other things which have just contributed to this matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
The final question. Yes, sorry. The final question is going to be on Black Lives Matter and misguided anger. Is the anger of black people misguided?
I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear that I know that some people are a lot of black people actually, like probably the majority, are facing their anger to the government and to the elite. But perhaps I didn't make that clear enough that the movement I think so. I may be wrong. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. That it gave birth to a lot of misguided anger. And in my speech, I was mainly focusing on that, and I do agree with you. We all do. That not all anger is led to white people. That a lot of it is led to the actually elite and the government. And I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear enough.
Okay, thank you. Right, just looking at the time now, we will need to start wrapping up soon. So we will take, I think, 2 more questions from the audience, and that will be the last 2 questions. So maybe some of other members of the audience who haven't yet had a chance to ask, if I could get you to,
and really pithy responses.
Yes, please, because we don't want India-Pakistan war, World War starting here, Third World War. But we do want we want informative questions which will produce very good results. We hope. Okay. Yes, Sarah. Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question to this team here, which is that if populism is dangerous, is the team in that case in favour of Chinese policy of preventing access to the internet?
Very good question. So, would they be in favour of blocking populist ideas like China is doing with the internet? Because if populism is so dangerous, would you be in favour of censorship? I think. Okay, that one we will come to that question. And okay, Bryce, one more. Very good one. Okay.
For this group,
also for the proposition.
I was thinking about this in my mind, and I was wondering if they were going to bring this up. I was surprised they didn't.
Okay.
I'm not really accusing y'all of being populist, but I'm accusing y'all of kind of using a stereotype. Do you know what the most persecuted religion is in the world?
Just
Christianity, actually.
Okay. Yep.
But I'm asking why isn't that brought up?
Why isn't Christianity brought up? Or what is the question specifically?
In North Korea, China, Vietnam, and many Islamic nations, Christians are killed, exiled, or imprisoned just for being Christians.
Right, and do you believe that the proposition is ignoring that?
I believe that they're standing on a stereotype.
Okay, so the proposition are trading on stereotypes is the second question. Okay, the proposition is trading on a stereotype in relation to what? In relation to Christian groups?
Or just in relation, because I hear a lot about Islam, which is a very, very relevant topic. But
yes.
What I was extremely surprised as to why this wasn't brought up. Because I mean, usually the biggest elephant in the room is going to be addressed.
Okay, and just a comment because this has to be the last question. Go on then quickly.
Islam, I think that in Europe, Islam, the Muslim population is not loved. But I need to say that in the Islamic state and communist state like Russia, China, populism is communism, so it's different because we live in a civilized state.
Okay, but it's not related quite clearly. But I think Bryce's question is that populism ignores the persecution of maybe Christian majorities.
Yeah.
Is that right, or it shifts the attention away from?
More intended towards them. I was more
probably.
their argument.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
final answers. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that will be the 2 questions then. Yes. The first question from Sarah then is: are you in favour of censorship? Because obviously the world is full of populist ideas. Are you going to clamp down?
No, I'm not in favor of it. But again, I am saying that populism itself isn't what do you call it? A lot of populist ideas are dangerous, but not every single one would be dangerous. So if you ask me if I support the censorship of the media in China, I'll ask you, do you support the discrimination of Muslims in Myanmar or the discrimination of Christians all over the world, as he has said? Because that's also a populist idea. But if we select and choose, then obviously we'll leave that. So
Thank you very much for that, Adam. And then the final question, just to clarify from Bruce, is that populism appears. The question is about populism hiding or masking the problems that Christian communities may have. Is that right?
Yeah, but it was kind of more directed towards
So the proposition, yes. So the proposition team is, in a sense, advocating.
No, I was asking why the proposition didn't bring that up.
Why they didn't bring that up? Okay, so why didn't you bring the question of the persecution of Christians, Christian majorities, rather than minorities, as it were? Okay. Okay.
When we did Christianity and through the lens of, when we did populism through the lens of religion, I was speaking more of when Christianity was a popularist opinion. And actually kind of what you said about why we didn't address it is for the same reason that Adam argued about why social media kind of represses some of the very, very serious topics today. So I think like the reason relating to why we weren't addressing it is because while you may consider it very important, and I do too, it's not, there's a lot of things going on.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our third and final session. Well, third session. The final session is going to be the vote. As you appreciate, some of the issues are very sensitive to individual members. I would like to request from members of the audience a round of applause. This has been a very heated and difficult session, okay? Both with religious and political issues being discussed. I would ask both members, both teams to quietly exit from that door over there. They will be called in. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you all. Please vote for me.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Shut the door, please. Make sure the door is firmly shut. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we have to vote. Okay. As I said, there are three possibilities: voting yes for a particular team, or no, or abstaining. So an abstention would be that you just don't believe one particular team actually won this debate. Okay, that's an abstention. Okay, and I'll ask maybe Molly or Frank to so if I could just have a show of hands, please, if you believe that the proposition won this debate. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So
are we allowed to vote?
No.
No.
7. Okay, in favour of the proposition. And can I ask, please, a show of hands for the opposition team? 2. Okay, 2 and 7. Can we get that? Any abstentions? With 2 abstentions. Okay. That will be it.
And then
now,
I'm going to give feedback, and then if you want to...
Yeah, I'll give feedback, yeah. And then also, can you and I decide on...
I think we decided, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. There's also their interaction as well. Yeah, I think so.
Should we get the
Yes.
And I'll give the results.
You give the results.
And do you want to give it to me?
Yes, I guess.
You want to give it to you can announce, and then you can announce.
So just the results.
I'll do feedback and then results. And then you do best speaker. Okay, guys. Well done. All right. Now we do have a result, and I'll give you that in a minute. Based on how people voted. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do before I do that. Some of you may or may not know this, but I actually have done a lot of debate judging myself, and I've judged at a few international tournaments. So I actually was keeping notes as we went, and I'm going to give you some individual feedback. Generally, I thought the debate was really, really, really well constructed, and it was really, really clear that both teams and all members gave a lot of time and thought into research. Okay, but if you will just give me for a few minutes, I want to go through each of your speeches and kind of give you some really, really good the points that I think you did really well in, but also maybe some pointers for the future. And then I also might talk about how you might think about working as a team in future. So Tess, I think you started really, really well, and you talked a little bit about the concept of populism basically being an elite leader with an agenda, and I really like that as an opening argument. One of the things that I think I thought your rhetoric was really, really good. I like the idea of when you brought in slavery and said that had done kind of great damage. And I thought the little link with Jed kind of later I thought was quite interesting. What I would say is that I've judged lots of teams from around the world, and one of the things I find, and it's just a trait of American teams more than others, and I've noticed it, is that they tend to be very, very fact heavy. And if you're debating in American style debating, then that tends to get rewarded quite heavily. I would say if you go to tournaments or competitions that are more British focused, facts tend to be less important than the argument. Okay, facts kind of support arguments. We tend to talk about peeling an orange, right? So you put your point first, then your explanation, then after your explanation, your example supports the point, and then you link it back to the motion that you're starting. So just be careful, and I think this is something for all teams, from going, here's a statistic, there's a statistic, everywhere's a statistic, because if you come up with a Times source, then I'll come up with a Guardian source that contradicts it. You come up with a CNN source, I'll come up with a Fox News source that contradicts it. So we can kind of end up being ships that pass in the night, or that collide in the night, rather than actually getting to the deeper, kind of more philosophical arguments. Okay, but that's just a minor point. Generally, I thought your speech was excellent. Elizabeth, I thought you did really, really well. I really liked the water on an aeroplane analogy. I thought that was I really liked it, and it was her idea. And actually, it's something that stuck with me as a judge throughout the debate, and something I will mention when I come on to me and Young's speeches, the fact that she brought it back at the end showed that there was a clear team kind of line going on there. Also about this team that I thought was really, really good was, I thought it was a bit cheesy, but I quite liked the Latin thing at the end that everyone did. I thought that was that showed that there was some kind of team coherence. I liked the fact that you brought in Obama and the populism there, and the anti-apartheid movement. Again, examples okay, but just be aware that it's not just, your speech doesn't turn into a list of examples, okay? Again, the same kind of idea. Again, really, really, really good speech. Ariel, I really liked what you talked about in terms of individuality and trends, right? When we talk about debating, and different formats of debating have slightly different kind of nuances and rules, what we tend to talk about is that normally maybe the third speaker of a four-speaker debate brings something new to the debate, or takes the debate into a new area. What we call that in debating terms is something called an extension, and I actually thought that was an excellent way of extending the debate into a new area that we hadn't yet thought. Perhaps, maybe, as a bit of team tactics, you and Lachlan might have been better swapping round, because at that point it kind of took the debate into a new direction, and perhaps we still had some of the more substantive meat of the debate to come. But that, again, it's a minor point. I thought I really liked what you were talking about, and I liked the fact that you brought in, Zayn from One Direction and celeb culture and some of that stuff. So I thought that was and the world without originality. I really like that point as well. Katerina, yeah. So I really liked this idea, which again was kind of an extension that talked about populism being this momentary opinion, and the idea that but you gave the example of pen pineapple, that was quite good. That it's silly, it's stupid, but it's not dangerous, right? And I really like the fact that came back to the thing. I really liked the way you brought in Black Lives Matter, and for me, that was one of the heart, or that perhaps that could have been one of the hearts of the debate. That actually, most Americans agree with the civil rights movement, right? And actually, the anger is misdirected. I thought that was a really, really strong point, and probably one of the strongest points of the debate. And so, for me, I really, really, really like that. And also, when you got challenged on it at the end, feel free to stick to your guns, right? Maybe guns is the wrong word, but actually that was really, really good. So feel free to back up your point. I thought it was a really, really strong point. Okay, Lachlan. I actually liked the fact that you brought in the religious dimension. I thought that was really, really interesting. And I liked the idea that you gave some historical answers, examples. And I also quite liked your interesting style. I thought quite like that you actually picked up some Latin as well, so you were kind of playing on them a little bit at the start. I thought that was quite funny. Just be aware that sometimes you speak quite quickly, and it was just hard to follow a little bit at the start, but actually then you got yourself into your rhythm, and that was really good. So I was really impressed with what you brought together. Again, Jay, I thought that was quite nice that you came after Lachlan, because you kind of almost clashed on the religion point, and I did like your examples of bringing in, what Modi was doing and the Pope, populist leader thing. That was quite good. So I think perhaps, and maybe this is something for all teams, and I know we had the rebuttal session, and that was good, but maybe later on down the line, particularly in third and fourth speeches, we might like to have seen some rebuttals kind of in the main bit of the debate. Well, just quickly, building on what the opposition has said, because the debate is supposed to be kind of an interplay as we go. But that's a minor point as well. Adam, I really liked your things. I liked your thing about Facebook being a classic example of populism. I think the idea that it was disconnecting us from the real world, I thought that was really quite interesting. And I really liked your example of the Syrian civil war and the celebrities and how many can we name, and I thought that was quite powerful. I think you needed to directly challenge what Katerina was saying, because that's kind of where there's starting to be a little bit of a clash there, and perhaps you could have. My bit of advice was directly to it, but again, really, really good extension. Ming Young, I thought your speech was really, really good, and I liked the fact you brought it back to back to the water analogy. I really like the idea that you talk about it not being dangerous. I really like the idea that you brought in China and Facebook, and I know Sarah brought that up. I thought that was really, really, really strong. What I actually think, and this is something that I think maybe Adam and both Ming Young can think about, or whoever can think about at the end, I thought what we talk about, the final speech, tends to be what's called a whip speech. And a whip speech is trying to convince the audience, in this case, to vote on your side. And one way in which you can do that, and I used to be a whip speaker often when I debated, the best way you can do that is to identify points of clash. And so to be able to go through the debate and say, look, we've had this debate and we have clashed on the following issues. There are 3 issues that we've clashed on. Yeah? Probably on the issue of trends and celebrities, on the issue of kind of historical examples perhaps, and on the issue of, let's say, religious issues, yeah? And I am going to show you, as the whip speaker, why we have won each of those clash points. Imagine it's like a scales. Imagine I've got a set of scales with 3 balls. You've got to tell me as the judge why you are picking up each of those balls and putting them in in my basket to weigh down, to show the weight of evidence. So Min Young's trying to say, look, these are the 3 clash points, and we're going to put these 3 balls into our basket and why we've won. And if not that, even if you concede that you've lost 2 of the balls to the other team, and you've only got 1 of those balls, but that ball is so big and has got so much weight to it that it's the most important point, it's the knockout punch in the boxing match, that we have therefore been able to win the debate overall. And so a good whip speech tries to bring that all together. Yeah, and weigh that up. But that's just a bit of feedback. Generally, I thought it was really, really good, and I think Min Young in particular, you kind of did that. But perhaps we can maybe frame it a little bit better. Overall, though, I thought it was an excellent debate. And I'm going to give the result, and then Nadine is then going to award the prize for the best speaker. So the vote from the floor was that 7 people voted with the proposition, 2 voted against, and 2 were abstentions. So well done, the proposition. And do you want to? And we have a speaker.
Yes. Right. Thank you, Frank. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, members of both the proposition and the opposition. I agree with Frank. I think this was a very exciting, very intense debate. It's been wonderful. It's very topical, of course, right now across the pond, as we say. A lot of the issues that we're discussing right now, Brexit is happening, Trump has happened, is happening. A lot of the issues that we've been discussing are very, very topical. So well done to you, because it requires a lot of research and a lot of I suppose verve is the right word, because to talk about Black Lives Matters, for example, and the issues that affect the black community requires very careful consideration in light of what's happened. And I think you've been each speaker and each team has been very brave in taking on these very complicated and very difficult subjects. So once again, well done. The task of deciding who the best speaker is very difficult. It's very, very difficult, to be honest, because I have my own favourites. I've worked with both teams intensely. I've helped to prepare some of the speeches for individual members. I'm aware of the hard work that individuals have made. But to be honest, today I have been astounded by the sheer quality of argumentation, some of which I haven't actually been directly involved in, because in a sense they've had to take questions directly from the audience, and so for that reason it's been very difficult for me, very, very difficult for me. But Frank and I have had a good word about it.
We all agree.
Yes, and Molly have agreed that based on the performances today and the fact that the speakers were unprepared for some of these very difficult questions in relation to very sensitive issues, I think that the best speaker tonight, again, as I said, it's been a very, very difficult decision, because there were about 3 that I thought were outstanding today, has been Min Young. If you come up. As I believe her arguments were very subtle. They're very subtle, very clever argumentation. So well done. You can take a there you go. Well done. Okay, so that will conclude tonight's. Maybe you want to take a quick photo, Min Young, if you just come back very quickly. I think we want to take a very good photo. There you go. Well done. Well done. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that concludes tonight's session. If I could just, before you leave, I think there might be some announcements from Frank regarding the arrangements for checkout tomorrow. Yes, and also the dinner as well.
Yeah, the checkout.
Okay,
brilliant. Okay.